Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Let's get settled so we can get started. Good morning. My name is Polly Peters. I'm a part of the Adult Ed Committee here at Fourth Church, and it's September. When I grew up, we called this Sunday Rally Day. Fourth Church calls it Get Connected Sunday. And I must say, on behalf of the Adult Ed Committee, I am very happy and appreciative of your participation and happy you are getting connected via Adult Ed. So thank you. We have a great fall season lined up for Adult Ed going through the end of the year. There's classes in the back, there's cards in the back of the room on the table that list all the classes we'll be doing through December. And of course, it's also on the website, so familiarize yourself with that. And another thing that we'll be doing is the Bible in 100 passages. As you may have seen in the literature, that starts with next Sunday's devotion. And that will be basically 100 passages from the Old Testament, and we will also be adding a weekday evening Bible study once a month starting in October to dovetail off of that. So you are here for the first class of the season entitled Prophetic Wisdom for a Hurting World. We are using Richard Rohr's latest book as a guide, and that will be particularly studied for the next 2 weeks. Next week by Vicki Curtis, and the final week by Amy Pagliarella, The Tears of Things. Prophetic Wisdom for an Age of Outrage. However, we are thrilled today to be led by Reverend Dr. Maisha Handy, the president of McCormick Theological Seminary. So I would like to welcome her today. Thank you. Maisha is welcome to give more biographical information on herself, but let me begin with a quick word of prayer. Let us pray. Dear God, we must say that we are certainly living in challenging times these days. How can we experience the joys of everyday life when it seems that there is nothing but pain and suffering all around us? How can we live compassionately in these times of injustice, violence, and despair? You can show us the way, dear Lord. Remind us of the teachings of those who've come before us that speak to the interconnectedness of every being out there and the reality of a divine love for all. Help us seek and find the hope-filled path forward, and let us begin today. We trust and pray in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, the floor is yours. Maisha.
I do. Good morning. Good morning, friends. Good morning, Fourth Presbyterian. Good morning, any guests of Fourth Presbyterian that are here. It's such a joy to be here with you this morning and to share a few salient points from a convocation address that I actually shared at McCormick last year. Reverend Amy Pagliarella serves as the chair of the Board of Trustees at McCormick, and I just thank you so much for your invitation, and to Jana and all of the wonderful people that I've already met. About a year ago, I focused on the call of wisdom, which you see on your screen, and I think that remains as a necessary point of concentration, not only in the city of Chicago, but our nation. I'll weave in a little biography here. I'm from the city of Chicago, born and raised on the south side of Chicago, attended Whitney Young Magnet High School, and then went away to college and graduate school and lived in Atlanta for about 32 years. And I worked at the Interdenominational Theological Center for 24 years as faculty, assistant provost, and then interim president. And now I'm back home to be with my family, my wonderful 83-year-old mother, and my siblings. So it's a joy to be here. I'm grateful for this opportunity to return to this subject and to add a little bit more context, to fill it in a little bit, as our lives, I think, have shifted radically, even in a year. Here comes my prefaces. I am not a biblical scholar. I do not have a PhD in Old Testament, Hebrew Bible, or in New Testament. But I do want to share a little bit about wisdom from the book of Proverbs, if that works. I know that you are reading the tiers of things, and I have the book. I'm trying not to preempt Amy's classes, but I will make a few references to the book for those of you who have already started it and are reading it. But today, I specifically want to focus on woman wisdom in Proverbs, where we see her show up in Proverbs 7 and 8. Again, I'm going to also reference some of Richard Rohr's works, but this is just a beginning of the facilitation of that conversation. We're going to be a little interactive, if that's okay. So you will have a little time to just kind of huddle with your neighbors around you to answer a few important questions, I think. Let me see if I can get this to work. There we are. So we see at least two references to the word wisdom, both in the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, and in the New Testament. Chokhmah, I don't think I'm saying that right, Chokhmah is the name for wisdom that we see throughout the Hebrew Bible. And then, of course, we know Sophia in the Greek is also known for wisdom. Dr. Naomi Franklin in the Africana Bible reminds us that woman wisdom describes herself as God's companion, created by God, and there when God created this world and created humankind. And so some of us believe that Chokhmah was a kind of companion and consort with Elohim, as Elohim created the heavens and the earth and all of the wonderful things that we have here on earth now. And this suggests also that for us as humankind, that we have an ontological ability to acquire or to live in wisdom that is inside of us. My background was in theology and personality theory with intersections in religious education. And so we know the word education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to lead out or to draw out. And so today we want to talk a little bit about how we attain wisdom and how we draw out wisdom as God's random and children. And so I'm going to read a little bit from Proverbs, and you can see it here on your screen. Proverbs 8, 1 and 9, New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. Does not wisdom call and understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals, she cries out, "To you, O people, I call, and my cry is to all who live. O simple ones, learn prudence. Acquire intelligence, you who lack it. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to one who understands, and right to those who find knowledge." This is wisdom, Chokhmah, who is having a conversation with her people. In Proverbs 9 and 1, if you flip over to the next chapter, you'll see wisdom saying that she has 7 pillars, or 7 companions that she hangs out with, her besties, her BFFs, if you will. There are some interesting things, of course, that always happen when we translate into English in our biblical text. But we can understand that these 7 pillars, also feminine words in the Hebrew, are an aggregation of companions who are connected to woman wisdom as she engages the community with these other women. For example, if we could talk about a proverb, there's an African proverb that says, "Many hands make light work." So it's easier to have more people cleaning the kitchen than just one. And so as her companions, we see prudence, knowledge, discretion, righteousness, justice with her. And so this points us towards the emergence of wisdom through generational, intergenerational, and communal experiences and the stories that accompany those experiences. And so I like to think about wisdom as a gift of exchange. In a chapter that I co-published in a book titled In Search of Wisdom, I don't know if you knew that, Amy, we talk about wisdom guides in our community, these sages who are in our community who have had certain experiences, not just the acquisition of knowledge, right, but knowledge applied in ways that cultivate thriving. And then you have wisdom seekers as well, persons who are seeking wisdom. And so we talk about wisdom as a gift of exchange. And so I like these two images, right, of the person seeking and perhaps also sharing wisdom. But then you have this elder, this wisdom guide and the sage who's sitting in this huddle with these children. And you can just kind of imagine, like, what are they talking about? What is she sharing with them? They seem so interested and enthralled in what she's saying. Dr. Yolanda Pierce, who serves as the dean of Vanderbilt Divinity School, in her book, My Grandmother's House, Black Women, Faith, and Stories We Inherit, called it grandmother theology. That's what she calls wisdom. Granddads, we know you have it too, right? We don't want to leave you out. But she talks about grandmother theology, which is the wisdom that emerged from generations back, quote, in the way that time and age and maturity provide an alternate lens through which to know and to understand God. And so through good old experience that moves beyond, again, just the mere acquisition of knowledge to the kind of practical application and ways of being that move us toward not a lofty sense of getting everything right. I preached a sermon a few weeks ago titled The Blessing of Imperfection. Isn't it just wonderful to just release all of the pressure of being perfect and just be imperfect but complete and whole? So we don't have to get it all right, but it comes with a deep willingness to learn from and journey and commit our actions to co-creating a just world. We're going to come back to that in a minute. And so this is what Proverbs do, right? It's what we call mother wit. It's what we call father wit. And so I passed out some pieces of paper. I apologize, I didn't have one for everybody. But this is where we all get to participate, and it's going to happen 2 more times. So if you have a sheet of paper, a little slip of paper, and you would like to share what's on your piece of paper, I apologize. I don't know if there's a microphone that we can pass around so that folks online can hear. Just raise your hand, or if you're wanting to stand and read what's on your slip of paper, let's hear what you have. Anybody? Okay, we got a few here in the front.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
When 2 elephants fight, it is the grass that gets trampled.
Good one.
Teaching is for hearers.
Got a few on this side.
The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are safe.
Proverbs 18.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can make it drink.
Every tub has to sit on its own bottom.
Don't fight the hand that feeds you. Which means if you're president of the seminary, don't fight with the board of trustees.
That is exactly what that means.
The board is right over there.
Show me your friend, and I will show you your character.
A large chair does not make a king.
To run is not necessarily to arrive.
Spiritual enlightenment cannot be separated from spiritual discipline.
Got one in the front. I know you didn't sign up for this. Thank you.
I will preface this to say that I do not agree with this one.
Uh-oh. That's fine.
Elders do not get into the boat to row, but to give advice. I try not to give advice.
Just trying to get you off the hook from having to row, that's all.
A fight between grasshoppers is a joy to the crow.
The ability to inspire goes hand in hand with the ability to listen.
Anyone else? All right, I'm going to ask a different question now, right? 2. Has anyone ever heard any of those sayings before? Folks say it, right? My mother was known for her sayings, right? And so every tub has to sit on its own bottom, right? Like you handle it, you work it out, you make it happen. Don't bite the hand that feeds you, all right? You can draw more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. Some people say it with salt, right? For others of you, some of you may not have received a slip of paper, or you did. What are some of the things, wise sayings that you grew up hearing? Anybody? Or that you say? Share with your children. Somebody.
One thing that I've tried to stress with my nieces and nephews is everything does not need to be said.
That's a good one.
My mother and I were both highly critical, and I still am. My father, a very simple man, simply would say, if you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all.
That's a good one, yes. Yeah. A few more.
My mother used to say, don't tell me how smart you are, show me what you've done.
Anyone else?
A stitch in time saves 9.
That's a good one, yes. Anybody else? I don't want to miss any good ones. These are some of the ways that we learn wisdom, right? We want to kind of make wisdom some high and lofty, unattainable thing, right? But wisdom, if you even think about the Proverbs, she's saying, look, I'm here. I'm in the public square. I'm crying out. I'm calling. In this particular instance, she's crying out of concern, right? And justice, as many of the Proverbs do in these collective writings in the book of Proverbs. But it's the fabric of our lives, right? And it taught us what to say, when not to say, right? Where to go, where not to go. And it shaped our ways of being. I love to turn to this picture. You can see that they're looking at this tree. I wonder what the tree is saying, right? From a kind of environmental, ecological standpoint, we know that our natural surroundings also teach us wisdom. So that Chokmah is not just this individual kind of woman and figure who's crying out in outrage all of the time. And Richard Rohr talks about that with the prophets, right? We think about the prophets as these kind of ragtag figures with, who've never combed their hair and only eat once a week, who are just screaming and hollering at everybody all the time. And he said, no. Let's get rid of that image. And so I think that this provides an alternate image also. Maybe I see her hands kind of doing the same thing. I just noticed that, as the hands on the other side. And so maybe she's, kids wonder, like, what's in there, right? Maybe she's telling them why not to go in there, why it's not wise to go in there, or why it is. Maybe she's telling them how the tree got so big, and that this tree is the wisest elder among us. One of my colleagues would always say, and he was quoting someone else who I don't remember who it is, but he would say, the wisest person in the room is the room. Mm-hmm. And so don't leave anybody out as we consider what it means to be wise. I also believe that wisdom speaks in stillness and in silence. So if you can just imagine, maybe she's just sitting here in absolute silence with these children, just letting them dream, letting them enjoy their own thoughts, letting them imagine. There's a relationship between wisdom and imagination, right? Out of which we hope comes creativity. One of my favorite beloved, I would say, ancestors, as I would call her, is Harriet Tubman. Many of us know Harriet Tubman as a freedom fighter, right, who escaped a plantation in Maryland and went back numerous times for family members and others to bring them up to free states. And, you know, we just always see the image of Harriet Tubman with this shotgun, which she never actually had, right, marching people towards freedom. But I believe that Harriet Tubman was able to do what she did because of her practice of stillness, of paying attention to trees, right, and of her natural surroundings. Like, how do you run hundreds of miles through the woods without paying attention in certain kinds of ways? She had a head injury that was inflicted by the plantation owner, and it caused her to have dizzy spells, fainting spells, right? She would just kind of pass out and fall out. But in those moments, she said she would have dreams and visions, and God would speak to her about which way to go and which direction to take. And it was in those still moments. You know, we always think of wisdom as something that's happening and being conferred at church and through a sermon and through verbal conversations, but certainly it can happen in other types of ways. And so here's our first group question. I've named a few ways that wisdom emerges, Chokhmah, Sophia. How have you received wisdom? Now, that has an embedded assumption, right? Do I have to say it? It assumes that we have wisdom, right? And I talked about it from a kind of ontological perspective, corporate and communally, corporately, that we kind of come here with something in us, right? We hope. But it's something that we also have to attain. So this is where I want you to just talk to each other, turn to a couple of folks, and just share with each other, how did you become so wise? How did you get it? How did you get there? I'm not going to fill in any blanks. Let's just take 2 minutes and share, and then we'll move on to the next piece. I need to share. Start. Let's take 60 seconds.
We would have done more sorry if we had. Part of that was 40+ years.
It's a gift. Okay. Sounds like we've had some exciting conversations. Still going? All right. We have 27 minutes. We have 27 minutes, which means, again, I can hear from you. So let's have a few folks share. What did you hear? How have you received wisdom? And we're not going to try not to point to my group. Anybody? How have you received wisdom? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting about the microphone.
Well, we're both doctors, and I think one of the ways that I really acquired wisdom is listening. I was a family physician, and anytime my patients need, and I went into solo practice because with the group they told me I was spending too much time with the patients, but I knew that I needed to listen to them to really learn how I could help them. And I really acquired a lot of wisdom from all the stories and things that my patients told me. And then we also talked about how we also acquired it from our grandparents and our parents, et cetera.
That's great. Thank you for being a doctor that listens. Anybody else?
I felt observing the behavior of other people, both good behaviors and bad behaviors.
Very true. Anyone else?
Get one more?
We talked about making mistakes and learning from them.
That was mine. Yes.
I said, received a lot of wisdom here over 20 years, so much in this church because I wasn't raised in a church. So it's been great to have the opportunity to learn things that I would like to have learned when I was much younger.
And I think we have one more.
Very true. Excellent.
Yes.
Annette, you want?
Well, this is sort of a given, but study produces wisdom. And when I work with kids, I'm lucky in that I taught a subject that goes to old age. I taught music. And so I think that it's wonderful to have subjects taught that will take you to old age. For instance, Dallas cheerleading won't probably do that. And so we want to have things that nurture children and still soothe them, I guess is the word, in old age.
That's great. Thank you. Speaks to that intergenerational aspect of wisdom. So we've talked about wisdom and who she is and how she is. We've talked about wisdom as a gift right, as an exchange, which I've heard in some of your responses. And now let's lean into wisdom as prophetic witness, because this is where you're headed for the next couple of weeks. The text reminds us that woman wisdom speaks in practical ways, that she cries out in the city square, asking the community to listen to her voice and to respond to what is not always the easy way. Woman wisdom invites us to the courageous way. I had an elder, Reverend Dr. Shirlene Holmes, who's now transitioned, who would always remind us that the word courage has the word rage in it. And when rage is constructive, wisdom can emerge. And so wisdom requires stillness at times, but doesn't, and it seems contradictory, but it's not, always require our silence, right? As Audre Lorde said, our silence will not save us. But constructive rage focuses on ensuring equity and that we're living in a just world. And so who embodies wisdom as prophetic witness? What does it mean to be a prophet? You're about to explore that. And by way of derivative, what does it mean to be prophetic? Did anybody like this bird? I love this bird. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful representation of wisdom. All right, Fred, I'm going to try to move here. Let's see. There we go. Stay with me. I know the picture. Stay with me. Okay. According to Rohr, prophets held Israel what he called maddeningly honest and decried their reliance on arms and on material gain to keep them safe. Does any of that sound familiar? Prophets expose what he called a group's shadowy side, often from within the group. Right? And so prophets don't tend to just show up from the outside and start talking to people, but they emerge from within. Why do I have this picture up here? As I said, my background was in the intersection of theology and personality theory. My dissertation looked at psychological theories on shame. I studied with James Fowler, if anybody knows the late, great James Fowler in human development, and Charles Foster, who was in Christian education and those intersections. And so I studied a lot of Sigmund Freud and a lot of Carl Jung. And I like Jung's archetypes. Has anybody studied Jung's archetypes? Like these different ways of being, right? These primary archetypes that we embody. And so you have the sage, which is one of Jung's archetypes, right? And when we think about prophets, we want to think, well, the prophet has to be the warrior, the hero person. Well, maybe not so much. One of them we know kind of ended up crucified, right? Well, maybe the prophet is the destroyer, revolutionary person, the one that's, woman wisdom is crying out in the city square. But I think Rohr presses us to look at prophets in a different way, and I want to press it even further. Here we go, Jane. I'm going there right now. The jester, right? We think of this person, we've seen this image of the court jester or the jester that comes to entertain the royalty and the royal person, right? And while Jung talks about that a bit, right, the person who brings the fun in the room. Are there any jesters in here? Just me? Okay. The jester, I love this part, will find a way to poke fun at even the most sacred of traditions and at the largest elephants in the room. The jester is going to tell you what the elephant is in the room. We have our traditions. We have our rituals. We do the doxology every Sunday, right? We're Presbyterians. I'm Presbyterian, right? We have a book of order that we are to follow. We have lots of session meetings. Is it just me? We have 3-hour stated meetings. Okay, nobody. The jester comes to say, don't take yourself so seriously. Have you ever thought of a prophet that way? That when we're caught up in the trappings of our ritual practices, of our traditions, of the 7 last words of the church, we have always done it that way. Here this person comes to disrupt what we're doing and saying, hey, this is becoming oppressive. How can we consider another perspective or another way? And so I love this image. And, we have the fun jester on this side. And then we have someone over here who seems a little bit more contemplative and serious. And it gives, I think, two different aspects of thinking about what it means to be a prophet. Rohr says that prophets encourage what he calls holy disorder. Holy disorder. He says they're truth tellers, and they radically reframe our preferred storyline of history. How many of you know that this is where we are right now? We are living in an age of historical erasure, of cultural erasure. And so this is the time where we need a prophetic witness that says, no, we can't erase what happened. We need to learn from it so that we can become a better and more just society and just world. Reverend Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon, who was the first African-American woman ordained in the Presbyterian denomination, like in the history of ever. She was an amazing Christian social ethicist. She said that we have to engage in what she called emancipatory historiography. So we have to go back into history, into her story, into our story, and emancipate it from those who would control the narrative and only bring certain aspects of our history forward. And that work, the work that she did, was a prophetic witness. She wasn't standing out in the streets crying with torn and tattered clothes, right? But she was at Temple University engaging in womanist work and saying there are some women's voices that have been excluded in our representations of biblical history and of our ethical history. And so let's set those histories free. And so we have to ask ourselves then, what is our role? Oops, that was there. In our prophetic witness. Rohr says also in The Tears of Things that society tends to revert to legalism and traditionalism, especially when there's a crisis, as places of assumed safety. But he says wisdom exposes this as the foundation of more disruption and control by the powerful. And so he cautions us as we embrace wisdom not to go back to what makes us feel comfortable and what makes us feel safe, right? That parent that said, sometimes you don't need to respond to everything, made you feel uncomfortable in the moment, but it taught you how to be, right, in ways that probably kept you out of trouble later. This is where we are now. It's the relinquishing, the empire that we live in right now wants us to relinquish critical thinking. And so Rohr says evil then becomes disguised in the rules and rituals of the righteous and of religion. And then the few end up having to get into John Lewis's good trouble. I want to think that good trouble is not just reserved for a few of us, but that we can all participate in getting in some good trouble. Are there some good troublemakers in here? Getting into some good trouble. It reminds us that wisdom undoes our need for what Rohr calls sacrificial offerings of oppressed peoples, of marginalized people, of people on the periphery, right? He kind of says, Jesus made this sacrifice so that we don't have to keep sacrificing. People, places, things, ways of being, how we show up. Wisdom calls us to just let our defenses down. Be uncomfortable together. Have the tough conversations together so that we can lean into a more just and equitable future. In order to hear, we must listen intently and faithfully. In order to hear, we must situate ourselves where wisdom is speaking. In this text, we see where she is speaking. Where is she speaking? In the city of Chicago and in this nation. Is she striving to be heard on Michigan Avenue? There's a proverb of the Minneaka people of Mali that says, when the music changes, the dance step must also change. Can't keep doing the same dance if the music changes, right? It's time to change our dance steps and to dance with the rhythm of music, because we are living in intense times and in such a divided nation, a nation that is shifting drastically every single day for reasons that we could be here another hour to discuss, right? There's an executive order every other day. There's changes of the names of departments every other day. Now we have a Department of War and a Secretary of War. There's a proverb that says the power of life and death is in the tongue. Has anybody read that one, right? And so what you call a thing, what you name a thing, is what you call forth. Why do we need war when we can have peace? And so there are forces that rage, that threaten our humanity and what it means to be humane, our right to thriving in our personhood. There are threats to our ecological systems and ecological balance. Can you imagine that beautiful bird and that beautiful tree ever going away? But there are persons who would intentionally attack innocent birds and trees. And so how can we answer then the call of woman wisdom in the city square? And beyond, as we engage in healing processes that respond to trauma, how can we engage woman wisdom through the directives that move us away from the unhealthy trappings of greed and of focusing solely on material gain, problematic notions of success, for example? How can we move beyond notions of supremacy of any kind? How can we move beyond xenophobia, which we've been socialized into, that leads us to sacrificing people? Will we ever have a moment of what the South African people call sawubona? Sawubona means I see you, or I really see you, I see into you, right? How can we see each other through the eyes of God's love and God's sovereignty? Since there are no gestures in the room, we'll move to the next slide. How can you then embody wisdom in ways that move the world towards justice? Let's make it personal now. Let's bring it on home. Fourth Presbyterian. You can talk about how you're doing this already. You can talk about what you're wrestling with around this, right? Because it's wise to be just. It's wise to bring forth a just world. Have you ever looked at the things that are happening today and say, the answer is just so simple? You know, sometimes we think about wisdom as just plain old common sense. You don't want to destroy the ozone layer, because then we can't live here, right? How can we embody justice, embody wisdom in ways that move us towards justice? Yes, yeah, we can do it this way. Just pop up and share.
This is a terrible way to start, but I think I share this with some people in the room from conversations I've had. I have never felt so helpless in my life. It feels like some of the things that happen, we have absolutely no power to change. So my question would be, how does one attain what you're talking about? How does one move toward feeling that one has more control and more agency with everything that is going on now?
Mm-hmm. You know, I had something written here that says, you know, everybody can't show up to the protest and to the march, right? Interestingly, that takes us back to the proverb you got, that the elders are not in the boat to row, but to give advice. But
my friends will not allow me to go to the march with the walker because I wanted to go.
But there are other things, right? I'm sure there are other things that you can do and that we all do. I think about that old adage that says, think globally but act locally, right? What are the small things that we can do each and every day? And I encourage people to start with the way you think. It has to start with your perspective, right? And changing our perspective. And that's not always easy, because some of us have folks who are in support of what's going on right now, right? And so if we come face to face with those persons, some of them even in our own families, how do we have those courageous conversations in those deeply meaningful conversations where we invite people to think about things differently, to think critically about what's happened, to think about how, you know, what's happening to our neighbors down the street isn't good for any of us. And at some point, it's going to impact all of us because we're interconnected around the globe. And so there's just a number of things you can do: strategizing, organizing. I can talk about community organizing, economic development, and sharing and all of that. But yeah, let's hear from a few more people as well. That one.
As in this church, we as members of this church can push the church to be more activist. So to organize people to go to the protests, to organize people to do postcards, to organize events here that would tell us that we're actually a light in the city, you know, that we care about people, not just the white people in the room, except for you. If you don't mind me saying that, I'm sorry to have to say that, but that's the way it is. We can put it in our hearts that if ICE walks down the street, that we will open the doors as a sanctuary, bring people in and help them get to where they need to go, learn how to do that, right? There are so many things that we can do as a church and as church members, right? We can start from where we're at and move the church in a direction that we feel is our own moral responsibility.
Thank you so much for that. That resonates deeply with conversations we're having at McCormick Theological Seminary, and you know, some of the development that we've had to do with persons who sit at our reception desk to let them know, you know, what to do if ICE comes to the door, so that our students can feel safe. They've come here to study. They're here by legitimate means, and they deserve to feel safe. Yes.
Following up on what Reagan said back there, the church is in a very active, imminent process of putting together plans. They've met with the city, they've met with other clergy, and there's groups starting, and invitations will go out to see who might be interested. And it can be anything from, yes, maybe you do want to attend a protest and take videos and, you know, share information, or maybe you want to work at a peace vigil or a prayer vigil, or work on communications to let people know. So, you know, just for our church, just look for that, because it should be coming within a day or two.
Over here.
I think the other thing that our church tries to do, and now it's more needed than ever, is the service that we perform for the community, for people that don't have food, etc., to expand that. And the monies that come from some other sources outside of Chicago for that have decreased. So we have to step up for that to help the people that don't have.
That's good. Thank you. Thought I saw one more. Did I make that up? Yes.
Well, you have to stay informed, and that is very hard because it brings up rage. But you need to read the most fair and objective things that are printed about what's going on in our government. And we need to watch a newsreel that would present both sides. And then the other thing that I have a really hard time is patience and baby steps. I mean, I'm ready to torch the place, and you have to step way back. And right now, I am forcing myself to talk to Trumpers. I have 3 in a Zoom group, and listen also, by the way, and 3, we accidentally invited people from the old neighborhood, and they turned into Trumpers. And that was a real challenging dinner. And we were surprised, but I was also trying to get my mind to work. And
I could not get over how uninformed they were. Like, they can't put it in the here and now. For instance, 400 people showed up at our door. We had no Spanish translators here. We only had limited supplies, and we sprung into action. And I told them what that meant. I said they had no shoes. It was winter. They had no boots. They had no coats. So part of it is educating yourself to be able to explain it in very simple terms.
Wow, that's very good. Wisdom is practical.
And that's one reason we have adult education here at Fourth Church.
Yes, yes. Good job. I was thinking that actually, that in the next 2 weeks, don't discount the fact that you'll be here engaging Richard Rohr's work to talk about what are the things that we can do prophetically, right? The word witness in the Greek is martyr. Right? Nobody wants to sign up for that, but we have to, we're called to. And it doesn't mean, that we're going to experience it, hopefully not, in the ways that first, second, third century church did, but it is calling us to kind of get some skin in the game here and have those courageous conversations, right, with persons. When we talk about diversity, right, that means being inclusive of people who may think differently than we do, but being willing to talk. We said wisdom is listening, right, so that we can perhaps come to a place where we can move forward together and see, that we don't want to become a fascist nation under a dictator. That's not who we are as Americans. And lift our voices and not be silent around this. It's time to close, I believe. And so I just want to read, as a way of closing, these words that I offered at that convocation that I mentioned a year ago to McCormick's community, and I share that with you. I said, following wisdom in the course of shifts in theological education, which we can all feel and that are also turbulent because of what's happening with the church at large and with Christianity in this nation, we will trust the journey. When there is no great theophany that points the way, will we listen for woman wisdom's voice in each other across our differences, knowing that when I look at my sister, when I look at my brother, I am seeing God? May we trust the journey as a beautiful labyrinth, knowing God and God's companion wisdom will lead us to paths of righteousness, purpose, and the transformation of the self, community, and our world, for God's name's sake. Amen. Thank you.
Thank
for having
you
me.
so much. Thank you.